Hello, everybody. Here we are again, live on Broadcast Team Alpha, YouTube, 3 TV stations, and a horde of other platforms out there, so you'll find us everywhere. And we are here for some cutting-edge conversations discussing quantum possibilities. My name is Aage, and my co-host Nori cannot be here tonight, and I miss her, because she got in contact with somebody with COVID, and now she's got a splitting headache, and she's sick, got a fever, so we decided, or she decided, that it would probably be better for her to stay in bed and try to get well. And I totally agree with her. But we have a phenomenal guest tonight. And before I talk about him, I want to also tell you how you can connect with us. You can find us at broadcastteamalpha.com. And we're on YouTube with the same name. And you can check out the other shows also while you get to YouTube. And when you get to broadcastteamalpha.com, you're going to have some fun if you go into the picture gallery. There is about 5,000 pictures in there of things that should not exist, but it does. So you'll have some fun in there. And I also, I don't know where I'm going to start here because of the guest. He can talk on absolutely anything. And if you like what you hear tonight, please subscribe and click the bell. That will help us also. Besides, you are going to get a notification when the next show or video come up, and you don't want to miss that. And also, if you like what you hear, please support us also on the Super Chat. It does tell us that we are doing the right thing, and that makes us feel good. Now, we have also created a spiritual think tank. I want to invite you to come and join us on that one. It's called the Mastermind Connection. And we are bending the laws of physics here. Well, we are bending the laws of Newtonian physics. If we get into quantum mechanics, everything can be explained. And send us an email on that, and I'll send you some information about what we're doing. So send it to the Mastermind Connection at gmail.com. And now for the guest. Wow. He is returning to Broadcast Team Alpha, and we have L.A. Marzulli with us. L.A. Marzulli, I want to also tell you his website first, because a lot of people want to surf at the same time they're listening, and that is lamarzulli.net. That's simple. L.A. Marzulli with a Z. ZULLI.net. And there is also another site you may want to visit, because there's some incredible things there, and that is the WatchmanChronicles.com. The WatchmanChronicles.com. And LA, he is an author now. I just found out he's got 13 books out there that he has authored. And this include one on the Nephilim, and I'm going to see if I can twist his arm to talk a little bit about those really tall guys. Because there is so much to learn and so much that's been hidden from us on that subject, and it could turn very interesting. Now, he also has a trilogy. He got the CBA bestseller list, and based on the trilogy, he got an honorary from the Pacific International University. An honorary doctorate, actually. I lost that one. His book series on the Trail of the Nephilim, Volume 1 and 2, that is something that you should go to Amazon and have a look at, see what's in there, because that is interesting. And that is in full color, and they show evidence of their existence and how they were. Now, that's different. And And let's see, he's not this. The Watchmen Chronicles, I suppose, is fairly new, and he's got some incredible thing in there. So go watch for that. And he has a new movie out. This movie deals with what mostly is thought of as alien abductions, though it may not even be alien, but it is abductions. And also, I'm going to ask him also, we never visited this, but there may be partially people that was not abducted but ended up on a spacecraft, but they were invited. I want to hear his take on that, because that is something that I just happened to know somebody that was invited on, and there was an incredible story behind that. So welcome to the show, LA.
It's great to be here. Thanks for having me on. Appreciate it.
Yeah. Oh, gosh. I don't know. You got so much to talk about. Why don't we start at the recent? You just put this movie out about alien or abductions. Talk about that. I'm all ears.
Well, this is number 4 in the ongoing UFO series. The original film was called The Watchmen Chronicles. We've sort of changed all that. So the site that you mentioned, we really should shut it down because it only has one film. But on our website, lamarzulli.net, all 4 films are there. We actually have all 4 UFO films in a 4-pack. So the first one is basically, UFOs are real, and we just show that we've got a ton of witnesses that come in talking about what they saw, what happened. Number 2 in the series is we sit down with Francisco Carrera and Preston Dennett, 2 lifelong UFO researchers. And I sit there and we're just talking shop the whole time. We go from Roswell to abductions to, the whole gamut that we touch on Fatima, all over the map. And the third one is close encounters of basically close encounters, where people are seeing craft up close, very personal, and they come in and they share their testimony. And some of the testimonies are just incredible. All that to lead up to number 4. And number 4 is on the ongoing burgeoning abduction phenomena, which has been going on literally for decades. John Mack talked about it decades ago. Dr. David Jacobs has written numerous books about it. And this is something it's more secretive than the atom bomb. It's so compartmentalized. It's so controlled that not many people know about it. Now, let me just say this. I'll preface where I'm going to go by stating this, that the Fox News Channel, one of their anchors, Brett Baer, did a report. And the report stated, we show this in the film, the report stated that some women who are taken aboard UFOs find themselves pregnant. That's my wheelhouse.
Yeah.
That's what I've been investigating literally for decades. The breeding program is here. It's happening. And there are 2 women who come in on the film, 2 women, 2 men. So there's 4 people altogether. There's other people that we could have brought on the film, but the film was about 1 hour and 18 minutes. So we've made our case. We don't need to bring 50 people in, but we could have brought more people in who have been abducted. And, Steven Spielberg did a wonderful series called Taken. And it's basically on the ongoing abduction and what happens. It's all fictional, but it's based on great research, and it's totally right on, in my opinion, until the very, very end. And then we differ in our opinion. But these people all were taken. Al Matthews, for instance, taken from early childhood. Emil, early childhood. Karen, early childhood. The fourth person, Angela, she's not sure, but she was definitely taken, and she talks about this one incident where she's floated out of the trailer. This is how they take you. Emil up through the ceiling, out through the window. Karen going through the window. Not the window doesn't open; they go through the window. Al Matthews, the same thing. And people get switched off. In other words, when you're taken, these entities have the ability to switch you off. So you just go unconscious. Now, Angela awakened on the table in the craft. She sat up. That's not supposed to happen. Same thing with Al. He wakes up, he's on the table, he looks over, there's two gray aliens over here, looks to the other side, two gray aliens on the other side, their heads are tilted like this, boom, he shut off just like that. The same thing with Emil. Emil talks about something that he was at his grandparents' house in Malibu decades ago when he was just a child. And because he was being found outside at night, they put locks on the doors and locks on the windows. What's he doing outside? And he looks right at the camera and goes, well, explain that to me. How did that happen? And he talks about being on a camp out, in the summer here in the Santa Monica Mountains. And he goes, the other kids are sleeping, but here they come right over the wall to come and get me. And these people are haunted by what happened to them. And in many instances, they're afraid to talk about it because who would believe them? In fact, in the beginning of the film, I do a narration, and I basically say, these people live in fear and rejection, afraid to come forward, afraid to talk about it, because who's going to believe them? And many people, I remember I spoke at this one church in Daphne, Alabama, John Kilpatrick's church, the first time I was there, and his son is sitting up in the second row, in the first row, whatever. And there's about, 300, 400, 500 people in the church. And I go, how many of you have seen lights in the sky, orbs, had a visitation, had sleep paralysis, been taken? Raise your hand. And about a third of the audience raises their hand. Well, the pastor's son looks around and he's like, he couldn't believe it. He figured 2 or 3 people would raise their hand. Upwards of 30% of the audience have their hands raised. So it's not talked about in the churches per se, and yet it's found in the biblical prophetic narrative that, but you got to connect the dots. You got to get, and I've been 43 years connecting dots here, and the dots are connected. This film, number 4 in the series, The Coming UFO Invasion, Exposing the Dragon's Dark Secrets. That's the subtitle. We expose the dragon's dark secrets because it's all in the biblical prophetic narrative. Some of these prophecies are written thousands of years ago, and now we see that we can decipher them, and it fits into exactly what's going on today. So in some ways, I think it's the most important film I've ever made to date.
I think there were some really good psychics 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 years ago. They were able to see things that now is unfolding. I'm using the word psychic loosely here, but
I know. I would respectfully disagree. These were not psychics. These people who wrote were literally designated as prophets. And thousands of years ago, if you were a prophet, you had to be 100% accurate, 100% of the time. There was no, he's 70% accurate. No, it doesn't work that way. It's 100% accurate 100% of the time. And so these people who were prophesying were under the power of a spirit of a living God. And these prophecies are called out with great specificity. They're not some fuzzy, with all due respect to Nostradamus out there, they're not these little fuzzy quatrains. They're stated with great specificity. And some of these, many of them are still unfulfilled, and they will be fulfilled in the coming years. One of the most startling ones that you can point to happened in modernity, 1948, the nation of Israel being reborn in a day, which was prophesied thousands of years ago. It says, can a nation be born in a day? Can these bones put flesh on? I'm kind of hopping around here. And that's, I will gather my people from the four corners of the earth and reestablish them in their ancient land, never to be removed again. I mean, that prophecy is thousands of years old. And the idea that on the ashes of the Holocaust, the birth pangs of a nation of Israel were the Holocaust. And that's a 3-hour conversation. I mean, I've written about it, that Hitler knew what he was doing when he went after the Jews. Because if he could figure this, if I kill all of them, then prophecy will never happen. God's a liar. That's what's at stake here. I wrote about that in the book, The Cosmic Chess Match, because we see this cosmic war going on between the two sides.
When you were talking about people being abducted, have you also run into stories where the person was abducted, he was on the craft, they saw the grays, but they also saw humans, in fact, even in uniform, military uniform? Now that shows a cooperation that not talked about much.
It's not, we didn't delve into that, but that I've heard this story from other witnesses, other abductees. They've talked about this. Karen alludes to it a little bit in number 4 of, the latest film that came out. She alludes to it because she talks about being in a place with other children, and then there's gray aliens, but there's also human beings. And she said one of them looked very much like my principal, and she's like in second grade. And when she would see the principal in the school, she would hide in the bathroom. She was terrified of us, man. So I've heard all sorts of stories from abductees where they talk about the military being side by side, the grays. I'll just give you one example. That this one young man was working in a deep underground military base, and his father was ex-agency, and they're watching a football game, just he and his dad. His dad told us the story through his dad's friend. So it's secondhand information. I get that. But, do with it what you will. And he just basically said this. He said, Dad, I'm working with aliens, and because he couldn't keep it in any longer. I'm working with aliens in deep underground, side by side, these guys. We're back engineering stuff, and we're working right next to them. Another witness came forward and basically stated the same thing. Now, 30 years ago, if you said things like this, you were targeted. No doubt about it, you were targeted. Today, the game has changed. And I've often talked about this, that the old guard from Roswell are all dead. The old guard that put the kibosh on everything, all the disinformation, Project Blue Book, Jalen Hynek going out and saying it's swamp gas, it's the planet Venus, all the, guys like Philip Klass, weather balloons, all the professional debunkers are no longer in business. You're not there anymore. So our government has stated on the record, I did this on my show last week. There's it's called ARS, AARS. And it's a new, Arrow, AARO, Arrow. And it's basically talking about anyone who signed a non-disclosure agreement from pre-Roswell to the present day, come forward. No penalty. Don't worry about your NDA. So the game has changed. The game has changed. The old guard is gone that put the kibosh on Roswell. And everything in it. And it's so funny how some of these people, Roswell was just a weather balloon. Nonsense. I have 2 witnesses, okay? One was Dr. Jesse Marcel Jr., who was like 12 years old at the time when his father, Jesse Marcel Sr., investigated the wreckage and brought back a box of the material, set it on his kitchen table, woke up his wife and his son and said, look at this, handle this, you might never see it again. They stood by their story for decades under ridicule and everything else. Yep. So Jesse Marcel Jr. came on the record in the book, in one of my books. It's a handwritten testimony. I asked him questions. He typed the answers out. The second one was Colonel Hill, who was OSS, which is the forerunner of the CIA, who was flown to Roswell within 24 hours after the event. And there was one alien that was still alive. One of the grays was still alive, and he tried to communicate with it and couldn't. The thing had 6 fingers, not 5. It was in like a gray suit. The head was really big, black almond eyes. It was a deathbed confession. Colonel Hill died a month after he told the caretakers, which then told me the story. So, I mean, I've got 2 witnesses. Granted, in a court of law, would it hold up? Yeah, it would be. I think it would. Roswell was not a weather balloon. And those people and it's so funny, the government comes out, Roswell, case closed, every couple of years. Well, they stopped doing that now because in 2017, the game changed. The old guard now this is all conjecture. When I say the old guard was gone, that's conjecture on my part. But the old guard's gone. And the new guard is going, we can't put the kibosh on this any longer. At some point, Augie, they will roll out, mark my words, at some point they will roll out the film of the Roswell crash. They will do that.
Yes.
They will do that, guaranteed. Yeah. At some point.
Yeah, because they had, as far as I know, there were two cameras rolling at different times as they were doing this. So they have a lot of footage.
They've got the footage. Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's going to happen. Mark my word. As far as, the sun coming up tomorrow, at some point in time, I don't know when that is, they'll roll out the Roswell film. They will do that.
Yeah. Yeah. And now, if we take that from Roswell, there's been a lot of activity all the way up to now. Where do you see it going from here? I know disclosure is something everybody wants it, but I don't think it'll come from government themselves. I think maybe ET or maybe something else will bring it forward so the government are no longer in control. They got to release something. What do you think?
The late David Flynn posited that there would be some sort of a nuclear event on the planet, and that would trigger the appearance of the UFO, the Armada, the mile-wide craft. Mile-wide craft? Oh, how do you know that? Well, there's pilots in Alaska that see mile-wide craft. I interviewed Ricky Sorrell in Texas when the mile-wide craft passed right over him on New Year's Day. He's out deer hunting. He looks up, mile-wide craft. He's gone dark. I can't get a hold of him anymore. He's had it with the whole, he was like an unlucky pedestrian. He was in the wrong place at the wrong time. He told me there were black helicopters flying over his house after he went public with it. So he's disappeared. I can no longer find him. But he went on the record in the book, and also on my show years ago when all this happened. And so the late David Flynn posited that there'd be a nuclear event. Well, what are we seeing now? What's the saber rattling going on in Ukraine and Russia and Eastern Europe? They're talking using nukes. I mean, it's like, are you people out of your mind? Iran is saying the same thing. We will destroy Tel Aviv. Really? Israel's threatening to shut down the Bashir reactor because they can't let the Iranians get the bomb. There's just no way. I mean, duh. What do you think the Iranians are going to do? Kim Jong-un.
What they're going to do with it.
Exactly. Kim Jong-un is doing the same thing, launching missiles. Rocket Man's back in town. It's just like all it takes is one. And you see, when Hiroshima and Nagasaki happened, the world was not linked up the way it is now. There was no satellite system. There was no internet. So now when they light the grid up, and they've lit the grid up when the Fukushima reactor went down and the tidal wave came in, the grid was lit up. That's all everybody saw. Well, if you have a nuclear event anywhere on this planet, that's all you're going to see. That's all you're going to see. The entire planet will be riveted in lockstep. The last time it was really lit up was with the COVID thing. The entire planet in lockstep looking at what's going on. If a nuke goes off, this will create the greatest collective fear in human history.
Yeah.
Think about this. Fear is always the calling card of the dark side. Always.
Yes.
Fear is always the calling card of the dark side, of the dragon and the dragon's kingdom. When that fear happens, that's when they'll show up, in my opinion. We'll see mile-wide craft maybe over the Eiffel Tower, maybe over Moscow, maybe over DC. I don't know. But they're going to show up, and that's the game changer. That changes everything.
What about Operation Bluebeam then? Could it be that one, or could it be the real thing?
I think it'll be the real thing because too many people know about Bluebeam. It's like, it's not, look, they have the technology to do stuff like this. I totally get that. But I just think that it gets complicated because when they show up, the entire globe changes. in lockstep. It goes like this. The entire paradigm, the entire global paradigm shifts.
Yeah.
And that's never happened in the history of the world. They will tell us, ET will tell us this, that they created all life on this planet. They seeded us here. They genetically manipulated early man. They started the world's religions, started the world's earliest civilizations. Now, at this critical juncture in human history, ET, so-called ET, is back to usher mankind into a golden era. Well, guess what? They'll have two things. They'll have the energy system that makes the craft, the anti-gravity stuff, which will revolutionize the planet. They'll also have an implantable chip, which will expand your lifespan 300 years disease-free. How do I know that? We took out the implants. That's the prototype. That's the prototype. Now, that's all conjecture on my part, but it's based on decades of research, Aage. Decades of research. And you start connecting the dots with the biblical prophetic narrative. It talks about the mark of the beast.
Yeah.
You know, when that written 2,000 years ago, well, that can't possibly ever happen. That buy, sell, or trade without the mark, that's impossible. Here. We're already with the credit cards.
Even 100 years ago, they wouldn't believe that.
No. 50 years ago, they wouldn't believe it.
Yeah. Now, what about, I want to stay on this UFO abduction just for another 2 minutes, because I know a lady that is close to me. She was taken somewhere, or allowed to go somewhere more appropriately, where she would meet her children that she didn't have in her life physically. How often do you run into that?
Let me ask you something. She was abducted and then impregnated by them, and then they came and took the baby back?
Either abducted or invited, I am not sure, but she was introduced to these children.
Karen, who is in sort of the tent pole, the mainstay, the mainsail of our abduction film, she was taken numerous times, and she was impregnated 3 different times. They came and took the child, usually at the end of the first trimester. And she looked right at the camera, and you could see the pain in her face. You could see how visceral, how emotional this thing is. And she looks at the camera and she goes, so I went to the emergency room, and they went in, and there's no heartbeat, no fetal tissue, okay? And they look at me and said, are you sure you were pregnant? And she goes, talk to my doctor. You know, she saw the ultrasound. She saw the baby. Yeah. So we've heard this over and over and over again. They come, they take the child. That happened 3 times to Karen, 3 different times in the course of like 5 or 6 years. Yeah. Fast forward 20 years after that, one night she is awakened, and she looks over, and there are 3 figures that are there. And she thinks that they're her boys from the second marriage. And she realized, these are not my boys. They're shorter, they're stocky. Black-eyed kids, maybe, possibly, okay? And they look at her with unmitigated hate. Really? And they start to beckon her, because they're soulless, Aage. The hybrids are soulless. They're in a fixed state. The black-eyed kids are soulless. They're in a fixed state. Fixed state. The hybrids are soulless. They're in a fixed state. We've heard this over and over and over again. And she rebukes them in the name of Jesus, and they vanish. Now, that's not a magic formula, but she has a personal relationship with the living God through Jesus. And I know people go, well, that sounds religious, L.I. You know what? When you're being taken,
of course.
But when you're being taken and you say, in the name of Jesus, stop, and it stops, it becomes a whole different deal. Whole different deal.
Mm-hmm. Now, this lady, I was introduced to 3 children, and it's a phenomenal story. I think you want to talk to her.
Shoot me the email. I'd love to. Yeah, I'd love to.
Oh, I'll do that. Now, I watched one of your videos also a while back when you were talking about the giants of Americas, South America, Europe, Asia. There are giants everywhere, and we have the partial proof of it in the Paracas skulls in South America. And then again, we have pictures and videos of skeletons. We have actually human bones of a leg bone that if you add the rest of the body to it, the person would have been 32 feet tall. What about, where did they go? What? I'm all ears on this one. The floor is yours.
Well, this all goes back to the biblical prophetic narrative again, where there's an ancient prophetic scripture that says, talking of a dragon, your seed, your offspring, will be at war, at enmity with the offspring, the seed of the woman. The one coming from the woman eventually will crush your head. You will bruise his heel. So it's a seed war. It's a war between the offspring of a dragon and the woman's offspring. That sets up the rest of the biblical prophetic narrative. Most people don't even know that that's in there. Most Christians have no idea that that's in there. They don't understand that proclamation sets up the rest of the narrative. Well, 3 chapters later in Genesis 6, the sons of God saw the daughters of men that they were beautiful. They took wives, plural, from many they chose and went into them and had children by them. The Nephilim were on the earth in those days and also afterwards. When the sons of God saw the women of earth and took wives, these were the great men of renown. So who are the sons of God? They're the B'nai HaElohim, which always referred to the angelic host. Skip over to the book of Jude in the New Testament. And all these things, these are just thousands of years old, these texts. And it says, the angels who left their first estate. It's like right there. The angels who left their first estate. What is he talking about? He's talking about Genesis 6. The fallen ones come down, they take the women. Why are they doing this? They're corrupting the image. They're corrupting the genome. They're corrupting the gene pool, which is why it then says, but Noah was pure in all his generations. And so only 8 people get on the ark with a handful of animals and they replenish the earth. So you say, well, why would God destroy the earth? Because the entire genome is completely corrupted, because these angelic entities are here for 400 to 600 years. It's not a weekend frat party. In my latest book, Countermove, How the Nephilim Returned After the Flood, we get into this because all the mischief, as Chuck Missler used to say, started when they descended in the days of Jared on Mount Hermon. Next year in 2023, I'll be leading a tour to Israel. It's called the Nephilim Tour. We will go to Mount Hermon, where the mount, and that means the mountain of the oath. That's where they descended in the days of Jared. And they came down, and it was a suicide mission. Look, Augie, this stuff is so deep. It's so deep. And it's like, I've been on this trail for decades. So, I mean, I could talk your ear off for the next 3 or 4 hours. When I'm presenting in front of conferences, I got to bring the audience really slowly and remember that, it took me years to get to where I am now. I'm way down the trail from where I was 43 years ago. But we must understand that it's a seed war. It goes back to Genesis 3:15. The seed, the offspring of the dragon, will be at war with the offspring of the woman. This sets up everything. And then you get this very enigmatic scripture. Really weird, in the book of Daniel. And the angel tells Daniel 2,500 years ago, by the way, hey, Dan, seal up the words to this book. Okay, seal them up until the time of the end. What? And then he gives the angel, this is what it's going to be in the time of the end. Men and women will run to and fro over the face of the earth. Knowledge will increase. When has that ever happened? You can trace knowledge like this to the Gutenberg printing press. And then finally you get, yay, a blip. And then in the Industrial Revolution, it goes up like this. And now in the modern era, it goes up like this. And even in the Industrial Revolution, we still did not travel over the face of the earth like we do today. Airplanes all day long traverse the globe all day long. So that's the backstory. About 3,500 years ago, okay, the Israelites are taken out of Egypt. That in itself is a 3-hour discussion. What are they doing there? Why are they there for 400 years? Why does why does God allow this to happen? Why does he harden Pharaoh's heart over and over and over and over again? And then when the Israelites finally get up there, they send the spies into the land, and the 12 spies come back, one spy for each of the tribes. 10 of them go, the giants are there, the Nephilim are there. We were like grasshoppers in their sight. Ah! 2 of the spies go, no, we can take them. Guess what? The children of Israel follow the 10. And so that generation dies off, 40 years wandering in the desert. New generation comes up. What's the mandate, Aage? The mandate from a loving, holy God says, go into the promised land, wipe out every man, woman, and child, all the animals, burn everything. That's genocidal. That's maniacal. Yep. That's capricious. That's murderous, unless there's genetic manipulation that has been going on in the so-called promised land. I wrote about this extensively in my book, The Cosmic Chess Match, and also the following to that. Basically, the latest book, which just came out, Countermove, How the Nephilim Returned After the Flood. And Richard Dawkins looks at this and goes, the God of the Old Testament, oh my gosh, how can anybody follow him? And he's right. He's totally right. Unless you plug the Nephilim in, and then you realize that these are soulless entities created by the offspring of fallen angels and the women of earth. That's who they are. And so when Joshua and Caleb go into the promised land, word gets around very quickly that this is the real God, and we can't stand against it. Let me back up. When Moses shows up to Pharaoh, I mean, basically, it's 2 of the 3 stooges. Moses is slow of speech. He's a sheep herder, for crying out loud, right? Aaron, his brother, they've got this goofy staff thing, right? And which reminds me, I got to use that. That's technology. So he throws the staff down, and the staff becomes a serpent. Okay, yep. You know the story. The Egyptian magicians duplicate that feat. No one, and that, you got to stop right there. Wait a minute. What is going on here? Aage, there's a full-blown occult paradigm in operation in Egypt. Everyone knows where the power is coming from. It's all sourced from the dragon, i.e., that's why the serpent. Pharaoh's heart is hardened over and over and over and over again because he's ready to let them go. And then it says, God hardened Pharaoh's heart. Why does he do that? To show the children of Israel, you can trust me. It's such a deep conversation. And they finally get there, and there's into the promised land, and they go in. And at this point, 3,500 years ago, there's a diaspora of giants. Procopius writes this: we are they who fled from the face of Joshua, the robber, the son of Nun. That was carved on a stele, a rock on the coast of northern Africa. We are they who fled from the face of Joshua, the robber, the son of Nun. Joshua was the leader that goes in to the promised land. I'm not making this stuff up. So you get this diaspora. Our work on the enigmatic elongated skulls, and I want to thank Brian Forrester for putting all that on the map. If it wasn't for Brian, I wouldn't have known about it. And we flew down there, and it took us 3 years to get permission, but we got the permission. We filed all the paperwork, and here we come to find out that you don't need permission to take genetic material from a private museum. Why didn't someone tell us that? Yeah. So we took 58 samples out of the, and our protocols for collecting the DNA, Aage, were second to none. We've had people who've seen the film. We were dressed in lab suits. Mando Gonzalez, our lead archaeologist, and myself, dressed in lab suits, goggles, hairnets, double sleeves, full body suits, the whole deal. We would go into a room. We would take the skull. We would take fresh DNA sampling, take the powder, put it in an envelope. Chase Klotsky sealed it, tagged and bagged it. Boom, that's it. We would then leave as they bring in another skull in. Chase would completely clear the table off. Mondo and I would go out, take off the old lab suits, put on new lab suits, blow each other off with compressed air, and go back in and take new DNA. And then we gave the lab our DNA samples. Well, guess what? So the DNA evidence comes back that many of these skulls show an Eastern European / Middle Eastern / Black Sea / the Levant haplogroup. Shouldn't be there, Augie. If they all came down from the Beringian land bridge at the end of the last ice age, they should be B. They're not. E2, UET1, T2B. It rewrites history. Well, the academics don't like that, and they insist, it's all contaminated. No, it's not. It's not contaminated at all. Because if it was contaminated, then you would have nuclear DNA, which would be our DNA. No nuclear DNA was extracted, couldn't get it, because the DNA samples were too degraded. I'm not making this up. Are you realize, Augie, that, and I'll mention the names, UCLA will no longer take my samples, and all of its different, they will not take my samples. They hear the name Paracas, elongated skulls, or LA Marzulli. Nope, they will not. That's called discrimination. And why am I discriminated against? Because I'm going up against mainstream archaeology, which we're cradle headboard at LA, blah, 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 blah. My work on Catalina Island, okay? I was the guy
projecting something.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. They're projecting the Darwinian paradigm. And they refuse to admit the supernatural world, because in the Darwinian paradigm, there is no supernatural. So I got wind of this story from another researcher, author, who wrote a book called Mysterious Catalina. And I read it that in the early 20th century, circa 1919 to 1921, Ralph Gooden, the primitive archaeologist, was conducting digs out on the Channel Islands. So it took me 6 months to get permission and a $1,000 donation to the museum, which they regret that they ever allowed me in there, because I found pictures. I found pictures of elongated skulls. I found pictures of 6 fingers, 6-fingered skeletons. I found a giant, which was just under 9 feet tall. What's that doing there? And that was featured, of course, on the History Channel's The Search of the Lost Giants with the Vieira brothers. That's my intellectual property. I discovered it. I'm the guy that spent hours in the archives sorting through the pictures and going, wow, and then taking a picture of the picture and then sending that picture off to 3 different researchers who then extrapolated this, knew where the camera was. They could extrapolate it and digitize the photograph. And I want to thank Gary Stearman for pointing me that there are people that can, look at that picture and tell you how big it is. 2 of the researchers put it over 9 feet. 9'4", 9'5". One of the researchers, the one we went with, primarily the one I've talked about, put it at 8'9". Wow. What's that doing out on Catalina Island? And then there was, so I mean, look, they were there. The Native Americans all talk about this, but the archaeologists and the anthropologists go, this is just superstition by a bunch of illiterate savages. So if you say that, well, maybe Native Americans didn't build the Great Circle Mound or the Octagon Mound. Maybe they didn't build Cahokia. Maybe they had nothing to do with that. Because
maybe they had some help.
Well, they had lots of help. But so it's like, it's a mixed deal.
Yeah, even Joseph Smith, when he walked across North America, he wrote in his diary that he ran into giants that was twice our height.
Yeah, they are. They're easily 12-footers running around. The Chief Joseph comes on the record and talks about the Allegheny and the Huron tribes making a peace treaty, which is still actually written on birch bark today between the 2 tribes. And they got together and they warred against the giants and defeated them. When you look at Sarah Winnemucca's account of what happened at Lovelock Cave, I've been to Lovelock Cave, and they were red-haired, cannibalistic, sexually deviant giants. Look, Augie, they were here, and all this is swept under the rug. And if you say anything about it, you're a conspiracy theorist. Quit lying to us. Quit trying to cover up stuff. What are you guys so afraid of? Why is it that when I published the book on the Trail of the Nephilim, and I showed the skeleton with Ralph Glidden. We went back to the museum 6 months later. There's a hit piece on Glidden, but guess what? They have the picture, the same picture that I have, but the skeleton has been redacted, cut out of the picture. When we went to Graves Creek Mountain, all right, and we found a lithograph from the early 1900s showing a very tall, at least a 10-footer, in the mound. There was a museum actually in the mound, and there's a woman wearing a very long skirt with the big hoops and the whole deal, and a man with a top hat. And in the background, there's the giant skeleton, which is easily 9 to 10 feet tall, easily. Okay. Yeah. So this archaeologist does a kit piece on me, and he shows the picture, right? But guess what? It's been photoshopped. It's been photoshopped, and now that skeleton, which this is our picture, this is the original picture, is now shrunk down to about 6 feet. And somebody saw that and said, this isn't the picture that Elliot Marzulli showed in his film. You're lying. What is this guy? And I challenged it. I said, there's $1,000 reward for the person who photoshopped this. If you can show us or come forward, we'll give you $1,000. So no takers. So we don't know, but it was definitely Photoshop. This is how the game is played. And this guy is a tenured archaeologist. Stop lying to us. For crying out loud, stop lying to us. You guys have no idea who built the mounds in America. You call them names like the Hopewell. Well, Hopewell's a farmer. You don't even know who did this. You just make stuff up. Besides that, the Octagon Mound, which encompasses 50 acres of land, is an unequal octagon. It's an octagon is 8 equal sides. This octagon has 2 sides which are longer. So now it's an unequal octagon, but you can only see it from the air. How do you check your work? It's also built on an 18-and-a-half-year metonic cycle. How was that done? Native Americans did not know geometry. If they didn't know geometry, then they didn't know geometry. And where is the plan? Where is the sacred deer skin or the buffalo skin, which shows the octagon mound? Because you got to have a plan. I mean, I built the house you're looking at. We lost our house to the 2018 fire, okay? So I'm sitting in a newly rebuilt house that I designed. I drew it up on a drafting table. I used to do that 30 years ago. So I was a draftsman. So I drew it up. I designed the house and we built it. It's a fireproof house. It's called Gigacrete, gigacrete.com. If you're interested in saving lots of money on your build, gigacrete.com. It's an incredible system. And thank God we did it. And it's basically fire resistant to the nines. So, but I digress. But in order to do that, I had to have a plan. So if you're going to make an unequal octagon that's going to enclose 50 acres, you got to have a plan. Where's the plan? Where are any of the surveying instruments that it would take to do that? Well, they're not there in the archaeological record. And so quit lying to us.
They just didn't throw it together. There had to be a lot of planning on that one. And in fact, I've also seen a newspaper article that dates back to, I think it was about right after the turn of the century, like maybe the last century, like maybe 1913 or 9 or something like that, where they found several 10 to 12 foot tall mummies in the Grand Canyon.
Oh yeah, we've been on the trail on that one. There was a guy that came forward and said that he was out deer hunting and near the Grand Canyon, up on a bluff, and he shot an elk, and now he's following a blood trail. He didn't kill it, so he's following a blood trail, and he gets to this point and he hops this barbed wire fence. Within minutes, there's black SUVs surrounding him with the antennas on top, the whole deal. Sorry, sir, this is restricted area. It's all restricted. So, we don't know what's there. I say this every day every Tuesday is on the Trail of the Nephilim. So today was Tuesday, and I did a rebuttal, LA Faces the Critics. That's what today's show is entitled. And I give a reason why I do what I do and why the person that wrote this is uneducated. They freely admit they've never read any of my books or watched any of my DVDs, and yet they're telling me I'm wrong. Well, how can you possibly do that? That's ignorance and arrogance, a deadly combination. So this guy is following the blood trail, and the SUVs were there. And as I stated, that every Tuesday on the On the Trail of a Nephilim show on our YouTube, L.A. Marzulli on YouTube, I say this: there is a hidden history that's been deliberately obfuscated from the peoples of the world, and that's why I am on the trail of a Nephilim. And I'm on the trail. And number 8, we've got 7 films in the series. It'll blow your mind. It'll absolutely blow your mind, the stuff that we've uncovered. Number 8 is called Out of Place Artifacts, and I'm in post-production on that. And that'll be out hopefully March. We'll see.
Yeah, and now you have 13 books out there. Which one of them were you most excited about getting into the research on?
Well, I'm a trail
I know
of a
this is just like saying who's my favorite child, but still.
Yeah, you can't do that. But On the Trail of a Nephilim was groundbreaking. It really was. And that book, and I want to thank the late Russ Dizdar for pointing me in the right direction. I want to thank Fritz Zimmerman, a friend and colleague. We've been on many adventures together. Gary Stearman, Mondo Gonzalez, Rick Woodward, all these people contributed to advancing the theory that there is a hidden history. Brian Forrester with all the Paraka skulls. I mean, it's not, people don't get there in a vacuum. I was surrounded by some great people who assisted me in exposing this. And I'll tell you a story, Aage. This has to do with Russ.
Also, when you start poking at this stuff, the controllers, they discover you very quickly.
Very quickly.
Have you had any problems or flack from it?
I was threatened in 2016 by a guy from the deep state for our work on the Kandahar giant. Literally threatened.
Oh, that one.
Yeah, I was threatened. And again, that's 2016. In 2017, we're in a different world, because the whole UFO thing exploded in December of 2017 with Commander David Fravor. Well, it's the same thing with everything that's going on. For whatever reason, everybody's kind of backed off. Now, don't ask me why, but we're in a different window. If this was the 90s, no way. No way.
Yeah. Man. Now we got about 6 minutes left here, so let's talk a little bit about the movie. Where can they see it, and what will they get out of seeing it?
Well, there are 4 films in the UFO film series. Number 5 is on crop circles, which will be released late January, early February. It's almost finished now. We're just putting final touches on it. And what we've discovered with the crop circle film, we call it convergence. It's mind-boggling, mind-blowing. Number 4 is on the abductions, which we've been talking about in the first half of the show here tonight. You can go to lamarzulli.net. You can order. We have a box set, so all 4 films are in one box. It's the best deal to get. And we can ship those out to you. The first 3 are on our streaming site, streaming.lamarzulli.net, streaming.lamarzulli.net. And there's links on the website. You can go to all those things. Number 4 is not being streamed yet. We're waiting. We're trying to get it on Netflix. And so we're just kind of working through that. Eventually it will be on our streaming site. But that's where to go, lamarzulli.net. And I'd encourage you, the On the Trail of a Nephilim series, there are 7 films there. Fatima, there's 2 films on the Fatima apparitions, which I believe was a UFO event. And there's 4 films right now in the UFO series. So not to mention all of our Watchers series. There's 11 films in the Watchers series. So there's there's 13 books, 23 films. It's quite a corpus.
This kind of research, once you get into a little bit, you start developing a hunger for more. Yeah. And once you got that hunger, there is nothing can stop you. You can never go back. And you will find that it changes your life. It starts raising your vibration to higher conscious thinking, and you become another person. I don't know what I said, but it sounded good because that's what I got.
Well, for me, I'm led by the Spirit of the living God, and I mean that. And it's not what people think. It's not my spirit guide, but it is my spirit guide because it's the Spirit of a living God who orders. Like, for instance, I'm working on a book right now. Well, the Lord gave me that a year ago to write, and I'm just now getting the time. I've got 4 chapters written, and my mind is just being blown, and things that are coming to me because of that. Just like the Paraka skulls. I was about to tell you a story. The late Russ Dizdar said, LA, he called me up. He goes, LA, do you know where you're going? I go, yeah, I'm going to Newark, Ohio for a conference. And he starts laughing. He goes, you don't know where you're going, do you? And I go, I'm going to Newark, Russ. And he goes, are you by the computer? I go, yeah. And he goes, Google Fritz Zimmerman's Nephilim Chronicles, Fallen Angels in the Ohio Valley. What? The Nephilim Chronicles, Fallen Angels in the Ohio Valley? I Google it. I order the book. I order the PDF. Next day, I'm on the plane. I'm basically reading the entire book on the plane, nonstop, as fast as I can read it. So I get to Newark. I do the conference. I'm with my driver, who's taking me from the hotel to the conference venue, and it's Saturday. And I go. Let me ask you something. What do you know? Where is this earthworks? This Newark Circle Mound? Well, we're going to go by it in a couple of miles. We've been going by it every day on the way to the venue. I go, can you drop me off here tomorrow, Sunday, because I've got free time after 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock? He goes, yeah. So he picks me up at the end of the conference. It's 2 o'clock. All my stuff is packed. We drive to the Newark Circle Mounds. I go, pick me up at 5 o'clock. He goes, no worries. Give me a couple hours here. I get off in the parking lot, Augie. There's nobody there. Place is empty. There's a 4-foot asphalt. Yep, place is empty. Nobody's there. I walk up the asphalt parking lot into this pathway. To my left are the mounds. It's the mound of a great circle mound, 20 feet tall. And I'm like going, what is this? And I get up to the top and I look to the right. There's where the museum, that's closed. There's not another soul. No one's there, Augie. Nobody's there. No one is there. And I turn to my left and I begin to walk towards the entrance of the Great Circle Mound. And right at the entrance, I freeze. I stop dead in my tracks, and my breath is coming in pants like I'm hyperventilating. And I am looking, my eyes, I'm just like petrified. And my eyes are darting from left to right. And I'm just like, I'm realizing that I am looking at the rest of my life. I am looking at the rest of my life. This is it. This is the doorway. And that started on the Trail of the Nephilim. That started on the Trail of the Nephilim. And from there, here we are, 12 years later. I'll never forget it.
I also wonder, it marvels me to see, how did you get that elongated skull into the country? Did you have any flak at the border of the customs?
No, you can't. But those are all models that Joe Taylor made the models. From their one-to-one of the elongated skulls from right. You can't do that.
Yeah, that's what I was wondering. So it's a model. Okay, good. All right. Yeah, but that's exactly what they look like.
Exactly what they look like. Correct.
Yep. All right. Well, we are down to the last end of the show here, but let us know one more time where they can get a hold of you and also go and find your books and your videos.
It's lamarzulli.net, lamarzulli.net. I encourage you to go there and nose around. I mean, there's 13 books. 14 will be out probably the end of the year, 2023. And there's lots of films. I mean, just spend some time. Look at the trailers. Our YouTube channel, I do 5 shows a week, supernatural confrontations, where people like you have had a supernatural confrontation that come on the record. Just average folks, but they've had unaverage experiences. And then on the Trail of a Nephilim UFO update, questions with LA, and then once more supernatural confrontations. lamarzulli.net, lamarzulli with a Z.net. Thanks, Augie.
Okay, well, thank you very much for being with us. And I'm hoping here that maybe a few months down the road, we can talk you into coming back again.
I would love to. Always a pleasure to see you. And I hope Nori feels better.
That's wonderful.
My prayers are with her.
And for once, I'm going to talk for Nori. I want to thank you for being here also from her.
Pleasure was all mine. Thank you. Live long and prosper.
Thank you.